Hello crafty friends, and welcome to the third in our glitter ideas video series. In our first video we did 20 ways to add glitter to cards using wet glue. In the second video we used double-sided adhesive. Today we're going to use heat embossing. If you want to know more about heat embossing, then do check out my Heat Embossing 101 playlist. But our first technique is to mix glitter with embossing powder. So I've got an empty embossing powder pot. I've put some pink dappled embossing powder in it and then mixed in some glitter. This is just white iridescent glitter. I then inked up a bit of card with embossing ink, sprinkled over my embossing powder glitter mixture, shook it about to distribute the glitter and the powder nicely. I also sprinkled on a little bit of extra glitter and then I heated it from underneath, and I did this because if I heated it from above the glitter would probably blow away, but if I heat it from below the melting embossing powder will grab onto the glitter and will stop it blowing away. So you can make your own DIY glittery embossing powders by adding glitter to embossing powder. Another way of adding glitter to your embossing is to emboss with your regular embossing powder. So use your embossing ink, sprinkle on your embossing powder, melt it, and then while the powder is still warm, sprinkle on your glitter. The glitter will stick to the warm embossing powder. You can give it another heat from underneath just to make sure that everything's well stuck. And once it is, what you can do is add another layer of ink and then emboss over it in clear embossing powder. And this will kind of seal everything in. So you'll get a nice glossy finish and none of that glitter will escape the embossing powder. If you'd like to add glitter to stamped images or sentiments, you can use Wow bonding powder. Ranger, I think, do a sticky embossing powder as well. So stamp in embossing ink, sprinkle over the bonding powder, tap off the excess, then heat it from underneath again so that nothing blows away. And while that bonding powder is still warm, you can sprinkle over glitter, burnish it with a bit of release paper. This is just non-stick paper left over from some double-sided adhesives. Brush off the excess glitter, and there you have a beautifully glittery stamped image or word. You can also mix glitter with Wow Melt It. If you haven't got Melt It, you could use clear embossing powder or ultra thick embossing powders. So put some Melt It in a foil tray, added some pink embossing powder, stirred that around, added some chunky iridescent glitter, stirred it around again, and then I used my heat tool on its highest setting to heat the mixture from below, to melt the Melt It and the embossing powder, and then I poured it into some silicone flower moulds and left it to cool for a few minutes. If you want to know more about this process, I do have a video in which I go into more detail, so you can check that out. That will be linked below. As well as putting it in silicone moulds, you can just drop it onto a silicone mat or a glass mat to make some enamel dots. You can also use it with wax seals instead of the wax. And once the shapes have cooled in the mould, you can peel them out, and they might be a bit dull where they've been in contact with the silicone. Just give them a gentle warm with your heat tool and they will shine right up again. So you can also brush glitter into your moulds. I took some very fine iridescent glitter, brushed it into one of the flower moulds, melted some more of the Melt It embossing powder glitter combo and poured it into the flower mould and let it cool. I also did the same thing with some copper glitter, and once I took them out, the glitter that I'd brushed into the moulds was embedded in the top of the shapes. So you can add glitter that way. And these would look great on cards or gift tags or 3D projects. And for our last technique today, we're going to look at the Embossing pouncing technique. I've got a couple more videos that go into more detail about this, so do check those out. But basically you take some baking parchment non-stick paper, sprinkle some embossing powder onto it, cover the embossing powder with more non-stick paper and then heat it with your heat tool. You can pounce your heat tool up and down rapidly on top of it to melt the embossing powder. You can flip over the paper and heat it from the other side. The trick is not to hold your heat tool onto the paper for any length of time because you would block the vents and overheat it. So you just need to keep pouncing it. And once that is melted, you can peel the paper apart, sprinkle on some more embossing powder if you'd like I'm doing here with the pink embossing powder. And then once that's melted, sprinkle on some glitter, and the glitter will stick into the warm melted embossing powder. So here I'm using chunky iridescent glitter. I did do a bit more pouncing by putting some baking sheet over the powder to protect it. And this was just to ensure that my glitter was well embedded in my melted embossing powder. The best way I've found to remove these kind of skins from the baking paper is to flip them over once they're cool and peel the baking paper away from the skin. Don't try and peel the skin away from the paper because they're quite brittle. You can do this technique straight onto cardstock, so put some powder on your cardstock, brush off any excess, put some baking parchment over, do your pouncing so everything's melted, add your glitter, do a bit more pouncing, and then you'll have a lovely abstract marbled blob. And you can, if you want, die cut from this. This will go through a die cutting machine really easily, or you can just leave it like this and use it as a foundation spot for your focal point. And there you go, that is how to use glitter with heat embossing. There is one more video in this little mini series, and in that video I'm going to share ideas that were shared with me via my Facebook group. So if you'd like to see that, then do subscribe and ring the notification bell, and I will see you back here very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.